The H6 was amazing and the redesigned H7 was a stunner. So is the newly redesigned H5 Flow destined to make NZXT's PC case success a three-peat? Well, we're gonna find out right here, right now on Robeytech. It's always a good day for the Robeytech team when we get to see new PC cases. And over the years, NZXT has had some iconic ones, but some of them may not always have been the best for cooling. In recent years, as more cases have gravitated towards having both awesome looks and mindful airflow, NZXT has moved along with this trend. And they've tried some really interesting things to marry those two design philosophies. Not like literally marry them, just join them together in like a harmonious bond. Some of those ideas have worked well, like the H6 and H7 Flow cases. And then you have like the last revision of the H5, which, if you remember, it had a diagonal fan mount at the bottom of the case, which it felt a little bit more funky than functional, but hey, I saw where they were going. Enter the newly redesigned H5 Flow, a small mid-tower case with even more airflow in mind, and without the funky fan mounting. At the time of this video, the H5 Flow was available in two different varieties, the H5 Flow for $94.99 and the H5 Flow RGB for $124.99. Each version comes in either black with the tinted tempered glass or white with ultra clear tempered glass. Fortunately, there is no upcharge for color, and we absolutely love to see that. For our review, we're going to be looking at the H5 Flow RGB, but throughout this video, we're just going to be referring to it as the H5 Flow. Now, as for the standard H5 Flow, it comes with two of NZXT's F120Q fans installed. The H5 Flow RGB, on the other hand, has one F120Q installed in the back for exhaust and their F360 RGB core triple fan array installed in the front as intake. Now, we brought this up in our review of the H7 Flow, and we're going to bring it up again right here. And in case you haven't seen that video, you should check it out right here. These are NZXT's case version fans. That's code for they're not as performant as their retail counterparts. Honestly, we wish NZXT would stop doing this because their retail fans are so awesome. So we're going to keep bringing this up. NZXT. As for price competition within the $90 to $130 price range, cases like the Corsair 3500X, which we just reviewed right here, the Phanteks NV5 and NZXT's H7 and new H7 Flow all live within this range. So this is a highly contested space for the new H5 Flow to fit into. Getting into physical dimensions, the new H5 Flow compares its size to cases like Corsair's 4000D, the Asus A21, and the Phanteks XT Pro. Now, compared to the H5 Flow of yesteryears, the new 2024 H5 Flow is ever so slightly slimmer, but just a hair taller. Way to go, little man, you're making it up there. As for weight, the H5 Flow is just over 16 pounds, putting it within a few stones of the Fractal Pop Air and the Asus A21. Rounding out our tour of the outside, the H5 Flow has a modest amount of I/O. It's got one USB Type-A port, one USB Type-C port, and one combo audio jack, as well as a power button. This does feel a little limited though, but this also isn't a change from the H5s that have come before this one. Now, the H5 Flow does have a toolless design, so getting inside is actually really simple. There are a few thumb screws holding on the top and side panels in place where the tempered glass and front panels pop right out. Now, just an interesting note on the top panel, only about 2/3 of the top panel actually comes off, while the remaining 1/3 stays in place with the I/O we had just mentioned. It's very Lee and Lee-like. This actually does give the case some nice structure to it when all the other panels have just been removed, but it does limit your access to the top of the motherboard for plugging in fan headers and EPS cables, so just something to be aware of. Now, as for motherboard support, the H5 Flow supports mini ITX, micro ATX, and ATX motherboards, as well as eATX motherboards up to a width of 277 millimeters. Now, we didn't believe it until we saw it, but just like they've done in previous versions of other cases, you can actually move the NZXT signature cableway by about an inch to make room for more motherboard. Now, the one downside here is that you do lose one of the screw holes that secures the shroud into place. Now, I'm not sure people are really going to put massive motherboards into small cases like this, but hey, if you're happy with it, you can totally do it here. Now, moving on to the GPU, the H5 Flow supports GPUs up to 425 millimeters in length, which basically means that you can fit massive GPUs to go with your massive motherboard. For fans and cooling, it's not as massive. The H5 Flow can support up to 3 120 millimeters or 2 140 millimeter fans at the case front, 2 120 or 2 140 at the case top. Notice that. No 360 there, and 120 at the case rear. There are also mount spots for 220 millimeter fans on the top of the PSU shroud, which you're seeing right here on the build, but only if you use the special long screws that NZXT included with the case. Continuing with cooling, the H5 Flow supports 360mm or 280mm AIOs and radiators at the case front. That's important, only at the case front. 240mm at the top, and you can do one 120mm radiator in the case rear. NZXT does say that the H5 Flow can support a 280mm rad at the top, but you would need to use low profile RAM to make sure this works, so just something to be aware of if you're gonna do that. Now, since we're talking about the top, the railing looks like it's just a few millimeters shy of being able to support three 120mm fans or a 360mm radiator up top. Now, to our eyes, it looks like there could have been plenty enough space to accommodate, but it's just too short. The strange part is that you could modify the H5 to fit one, just pull out that Dremel, but this kind of feels like an intentional nerf to us. Like somebody looked at the H5 at NZXT HQ and was like, you know what? The H5 and the H7 don't really seem to be that different. Maybe we should minimize what the H5 can actually support. Maybe it's a fitment thing, but this doesn't make sense. What does make sense is how much support the H5 has for CPU air coolers. The H5 Flow has room for coolers with a max height of 175mm, which means like your Noctua NHD15, your Cooler Master MA824, and NZXT's own T120 can actually fit inside, which, if you've never used a T120, it's kind of a sleeper of an air cooler, and this thing blows. You should check it out right here. Now, moving on to storage space, the H5 uses a mounting bay that can fit two 2.5-inch SSDs inside with a single 3.5-inch drive on top of it. The bay can be shifted about a centimeter if you need more space for the PSU. But with how it sits at the bottom of the case, there really isn't much to be gained by moving it unless you have like shorter hard drive cables. As for the PSU support, there is a generous amount of room in the bottom of the H5 Flow. This means that PSUs with a length of 200mm can fit very comfortably inside. And this is where the H5 Flow gets a bit weird in a few ways. The side of the case right below the tempered glass panel bumps out a bit, creating an extra pocket of space where we typically fit like cables. However, because the cavity is mesh, you can always see the cabling through it. The upside is that this does allow the fans that are mounted at the top of the PSU shroud to pull in air from the outside, but not just pull hot air from the PSU into the chamber. Which brings us to another thing about the PSU itself. Because there are no cutouts for ventilation underneath where the PSU mounts, it has to sit upside down with the intake fan pointing up. This can create an odd air vacuum if you're trying to pull in air from both directions. Fortunately, it seems like there's enough air to go around in the space. Just be aware that you might want to consider a more power efficient PSU, which you can learn about in this video right here, which we did with NZXT. Maybe choose one of the NZXT PSUs. Now, something else NZXT has done is given us a unified front panel connector as well as USB 3, USB-C, and HD audio cables that match the color of the case. The H5 still has ketchup and mustard cables for the HD audio, but you know what? I think at this point we're the only ones bothered, but we're gonna still fight for it. Speaking of fighting for it, I'm gonna fight for you to join the Robeytech and Robeytech Live team. So go ahead and like and subscribe and make sure that you ring that notification bell so that way you can hang out with us anytime you want. Okay, now it's time to talk about performance. And guys, we've listened to your feedback, which is why those comments are so important. We've added GPU temperatures in here, so you got those now too. Now, as always, we're gonna slap the details of our test bench on the screen here and give you a quick reminder that all of our PC case tests are done with the same components every time in the same testing environment and with the same test. You know, science. These systems are run at Intel stock power settings as well. Now for the numbers, starting with our AIO test. While idling, the new H5 Flow averaged a crisp 23 degrees Celsius. These averages put the H5 Flow squarely between the Antec C5 at 24 degrees and the Asus TUF Gaming GT302 at 22. If you've been around the channel, you know that the GT302 is currently the top performing case in our test, but the new H5 Flow is certainly nipping at the heels right out of the gate. Now, moving on to our CPU load test, the story is very similar. The H5 Flow muscled its way into the freezer section with an average of 69 degrees Celsius, while it didn't dethrone the GT302 at 68. Remember, this test is run at the CPU at 100% load here, so these temps are actually super nice, and it was close, but it couldn't quite take it down. For our 1440p gaming benchmarks, the H5 Flow held averages at 40 degrees Celsius, right behind the GT302 at 38, and just ahead of the newly redesigned H7 Flow at 41. Now, since the H5 Flow is an air-conscious case, we slapped in our Noctua NH-U12A CPU air cooler and put it through the same test as an airflow case. At idle, the H5 Flow averaged 24 degrees Celsius, 1 degree short of its AIO score, if you remember. The average actually put it in the lead over the GT302 by 1 degree as well, so if you're air-cooled cooling, this is the king. As for CPU load, the H5 Flow was one with the wind, holding the coolest temperature of the cases we've tested this year, 75 degrees Celsius, but this time it pushed the 76 degrees of the Fractal North XL mesh out of the top spot. And finally, in our 1440p gaming benchmarks, the GT302 made a bit of a comeback, pushing the H5 Flow out of the top ranking, but it was literally within a hair, both averaging 44 degrees Celsius, but the H5 Flow was ever so slightly warmer than the GT302. I feel like we're watching like a crazy Dragon Ball Z episode here with Goku and Vegeta fighting over who is the strongest. Both cases are ridiculously amazing at what they do, and they go punch for punch in a lot of ways. Okay, now those are the CPU temperatures, but since some of you have asked about how PC cases impact GPU temps, we're gonna share that here. Now, let's be fair, we've always tested this, by the way, and we actually haven't ever seen any glaring issues that would have caused us to bring it up before. And if we did, we would have totally mentioned it. But since you guys have asked so many times, here are our GPU tests, which is a 4070 Ti. It averaged 29 degrees Celsius at idle, staying unbothered at 27 degrees in our CPU load test, and 60 degrees under load in our gaming benchmarks. And you can see how it compares against all the other cases right here in these handy dandy charts. Now these numbers are the same in both AIO and air cooler tests, with GPUs getting 2 degrees warmer in the air cooler build during CPU load testing. Keep in mind that these numbers represent stock fans plus 2 for our 1 AIO, so out of the box, this case is thermally awesome. And it could be even better with better fans, like the retail version of the NZXT fans, but we're gonna eat a bit of crow here because the case fans clearly aren't bad, but how much better would they be if they were the retail ones? Just saying. Okay. So we've looked at the benchmarks, we've examined the ins and outs, and now it's time to answer the one big question. What do we think about the NZXT H5 Flow, and do we recommend it? Well, if you're looking at pure performance, absolutely. The H5 Flow does so many things right with supplying air to components, and it's not just about fan placement. With the perforated PSU shroud, front panel, top panel, and vented side, there is so much air that is getting inside of this thing. Now, the only downside there is that there are no removable dust filters, and as much as we love the airiness of this case, there are just as many ways for dust to get in. So while you can remove panels and basically take them out and clean them, there's a lot of space for dust bunnies to breed and go unnoticed under the PSU shroud. What also doesn't go unnoticed, by the way, is cabling through the shroud. There is no hiding your cable shame in this place, people. So either cable manage well or be prepared to have a mess of wires on full display. Now the good news there is that there's a wealth of space for cable management in the back chamber, so rather than stuffing your cables in the bottom, you could bring it up and out. Unfortunately, with how the PSU sits and you basically have to flip it upside down, it would be impossible to have like one of Corsair's shift PSUs, which would have been really nice here, which would have really helped, but in this case, no such luck. Which is the same line for you hopeful back connect builders. This generation of H series refreshes just doesn't have any options for back connect motherboards. Now all of this is being super nitpicky, okay? Because we've had a lot of positive things to say about this case. What we've brought up pretty much could have been non-issues for most, but we felt that they're always worth pointing out because there are so many of you who watch these videos and we want to make sure that we're not missing something. But overall, this is a really good case. It's super easy to build in, it's incredibly performant, and it stayed true to the H5 line while pushing the design forward. If you're looking to build in a smaller mid-tower case and you need to keep your components as cool as possible, then hands down, we could recommend the new H5 Flow. Just make sure you do a good job with your cable management down in the bottom, and look out for those striking dust bunnies. Man, they are ninjas, dude. And that's a wrap for this one. Those are our thoughts on the NZXT H5 Flow, but we want to know what you think. Do you like the direction NZXT is taking with their redesigns? We saw some very interesting comments about the H7. And then again, do you think the dust bunnies are going to be taking over as our future overlords? Let us know that all down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you get a notification each and every time we post a video like this right here on Robeytech. Also, if you want to continue the conversation, or you want to know what kind of parts to put inside of this or anything like that, make sure that you head over to our Discord server, discord.gg/Robeytech. Amazing place to basically find other tech and PC enthusiasts that love to have these conversations. You know what? You might just make a friend. Also, don't forget, we always building these cases live over at Robeytech Live, so make sure you head over there, youtube.com/Robeytech Live, so you can see us building this live and ask any questions live. Outside of that, follow us on all the socials at Robeytech, absolutely everywhere. Thank you so much for watching this video. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. No, a dust bunny!